Hi and welcome everyone. This is Lavender Sky Panther. Today is Friday, December 10th, 2021, and the topic for the day is called The Sky Visit. It's a collection of images and sky observations happening December 5th through the 7th, 2021, and it also includes a highly unusual event happening on November 17th, which was the eve of that very strange and unusually long lunar eclipse that happened back in November. So before we get into those sky observations, an unusual encounter, I'd like to say good day, osio, how, buongiorno, guten tag, kia ora, jambo, kedu, buenos dias, bonjour, ni hao, dzień dobry, konnichiwa, dobronia, annyeonghaseyo, botarji, dobry den, aloha winala, kalimera, guten dag, and good day. Now, to kick it all off this time, I'm combining once again the Words, Wisdom, and Spirit of the Day page with the greetings around the world, and I also want to start off with a couple of questions. They go like this. How are we doing out there, in quotes? Is everyone getting really good at seeing in the darkness these days? Or should I say, seeing through the seeming darkness? Or do you find yourself unfazed regardless? So, I'm using that as kind of a trigger reminder, all of these questions, for what's coming up on this page and the next one. So I did have this highly unusual encounter with these happen to be a pair of eastern screech owls that showed up in the backyard on the evening of November 17th. Now, the overall air felt very heavy and dense. It was an unusual darkness above, just felt very different. The whole atmosphere just felt kind of like a dead space or a void space. And on this particular property, it's been family owned for, over 50 years. And nobody has encountered any owls like this showing up. And these literally sat on some lights. And they seemed completely unfazed. The one on the right is actually sitting, on top of the housing of the bulb, which even though it's a regular, light bulb, maybe 60 watt or whatever, the owl still would be affected by the heat. So it was kind of strange that it didn't mind. And then this one on the left was sitting with the light fully in its face. That's why its eyes are squinted a bit. But it didn't seem to mind either. And these owls sat there for well over a half hour. And we had turned the light off, they stayed. We turned it back on, they stayed. So they were completely unfazed with what was going on. Now, also, others came up and, took pictures of them, tried to be quiet, but some weren't so quiet. They still stayed there. And then after the other people took pictures, I went out and just had a moment by myself. Now, when I went out, I did know of, in the back of my mind, was the phenomenon that seems to happen, that there is a connection between owls and UFOs and ETs. And I'm saying that because there are a few references I'm going to just throw out, and I'll leave it to you to dig into more on your own time if you wish to. But there happens to be, there's somebody out there named Mike Clelland, and he has spent a good part of his life looking into the connection of owls and UFOs. And actually, if you just put his name in and put owls, UFOs, his name will pop up, actually. And so, because he's had encounters or experiences with ETs and UFOs. Now, there's also a scary, kind of, I'm from what I hear, a more like, not horror, but maybe a bit in that direction leaning movie called The Fourth Kind. I don't watch any of those movies. I refuse to watch anything that's like horror or scary. But they cover this concept too, where owls show up at the windows, and apparently they were, ETs in disguise. That's a whole other story, but I'm going to get to a little bit more about this in a minute. But anyway, that was somewhere in the back of my mind because I think I had heard some reports about what happened with Mike Clelland out west in the desert and his encounters. And so I thought, okay, we've got owls that have shown up now on the back porch, so to speak, back door, who have not been there in over 50 years. So that's an exaggerated, highly exaggerated event, which I've learned by now. I've said on other shows, my huge spiritual awakening, the kind of hit the floor moment, what are we doing here, what the heck is going on in this world moment, happened back in 2010. And I know by now that when something very exaggerated, something pops up in a very exaggerated way, that's the universe really trying to get your attention, regardless if they're ETs connected or not. So this was a very strange event, really got my attention, so to speak. So as I went out to go, look at these owls, potentially telepathically speak with these little even if they're just regular nature beings, nothing more attached to it. I checked in with the heart space and with my, higher self, divine, all that is, so to speak, and with God, and just said, okay, I'm going to go out there and check out these owls. Is everything okay with that? Am I dealing with just straight up owls, or do we have some other beings within them, or is this a case of like a screen projection? Dolores Cannon, in her book, The Custodians, talks about this phenomenon where there are ETs, but they can cast out like a projection of something else. So it's called, sorry, I'm trying to go through my notes here, and I went to bed at 4 in the morning, and I'm recording this early, so asking for a little disclaimer there. My voice might be low, slow, and a little different than usual because of that. But all that to say, she talks about the concept of screen memories or overlays, and it's essentially a technique where ETs might throw out a projection of a different animal or something else just to kind of throw you off guard a moment so that you suspend your like tightness and thinking and let all that go. And then that's a moment where they can come in and interact with you on a subconscious level, or the unconscious level, really, your superconscious level. But anyway, in that case, like, they can project out that they look like an owl, but in reality, if you go through what Dolores Cannon did with her clients, which was quantum hypnosis healing technique, she'd put them in the somnambulistic state of trance, a really deep, deep, deep one, where she could just interact with the superconscious. And so, in their conscious level, they just say, oh, yeah, I saw an owl. But then when they go deep into that process, Dolores Cannon would be able to talk to the superconscious. The superconscious would say, oh, yeah, no, that wasn't an owl, that was an ET. And, it had an appearance that she probably, this person couldn't have handled if they saw it. So they flashed out, projection of this owl, and, then they were able to interact with her, that type of thing. There are more elegant ways of describing this. I'm trying to get this show recorded in a very short period of time today, and I'm mindful of that, so it's a little bit of a rush job, but bear with me. Anyway, I'm going to cover that more a little bit on the next slide anyway. So I'm going to hop all over the place, but this was such an unusual, striking, event to like really get my attention. Also, it was exaggeration on top of exaggeration. We have one squat little chubby thing over here, and then on the right, this one was unusually thin. So it's just strange that this pair would be together, I thought. So that further got my attention and waked me up a bit to say, okay, this might not be the typical animal encounter situation. We might be dealing with more than that. And when I saw this oddball pair, I immediately thought of the comedian pairs or duos throughout, our recent history in the comedy TV days. So it's like Laurel and Hardy or Abbott and Costello, where you've got the tall, thin, straight man and the chubby, more, kind of buffoon comedic character in the comedy archetype here. And then on top of that, after interacting with these, and I'll tell you what happened, then it started to become like, are we dealing with, good cop on the left, bad cop on the right? So all of this was going on. So the really brief version of the encounter was, so I go out after the others had taken pictures of these guys, or girls, or whatever they are. And so I just had a moment, and again, I did a little check-in with the higher power, and like, am I okay here? Is it okay to go out and look at them, or what's going on? And so, and I looked up in the skies, again, mindful in the back of my mind that sometimes there's this connection between UFOs and ETs and owls. And so I looked up all around. I didn't really see anything, or feel anything, rather, I should say, unusual. Just the heavy oppressive nature of the atmosphere. I did feel that. I didn't see any craft or cloaking craft or anything. So I go out and I start looking at them, and like I would with, approaching any like cat or dog, and you're like, oh, hi, hi there, all friendly and smiling. But then very quickly I got a very different vibe coming off of these. So my eye, for whatever reason, was naturally drawn to the little chubby one first. And this one just seemed aloof and not paying attention, really. I mean, he had his eye on me, but he seemed very indifferent, very neutral, no energy reading. I couldn't get anything coming off of him whatsoever, friendly or unfriendly. Then this one on the right just really kind of creeped me out. So this one had such a penetrating stare, it did not blink or squint its eyes at all. You can see its like ears are at a heightened attention, and these maybe were too, but the way the light was cast, this one just had a more, not ominous presence, but yeah, kind of like a looming bit of darkness there. And so again, my natural reaction was just kind of to laugh and say, "Oh, hi, hi, little fellow," that type of thing. But then the more I looked at it, there was a moment where when I did look straight into its eyes, it started to lock onto me energetically, and it seemed to be wanting to, it didn't probe my brain or mind or anything, but it just seemed to be like pulling stuff out of my whole body, like from the heart space, like a tractor beam. It seemed to be wanting to pull that there. So very quickly I recognized what was going on, and I broke that. I broke that energetic pull, and I just started laughing. I'm like, okay, whatever you're going to do, what you're trying to do isn't going to work with me. And I just started laughing. Now, I still wasn't quite sure what was going on, because I guess my overall mindset was, oh, these are friendly. They're cute little owls. We haven't seen anything like this. How new, how incredible. And I was very lighthearted. And so I broke that spell. And actually, that's a great metaphor or analogy, or I don't know what the proper word is for it, of what's going now in the world. So there is this kind of dark spell being cast, whether people are watching and getting totally sucked in energetically to the hypnotic box, aka television, or there's something else being done by people who know, or entities, I should say, who know how to manipulate energies. And they're putting this like dark spell over the world, so nobody's seeing clearly. Nobody's using common sense or critical thinking or discernment anymore. Not nobody, but a bulk of the population who is subscribing to suffocating themselves with face coverings or injecting themselves with highly questionable and in many cases proven lethal and toxic substances into their body, which they wouldn't normally do on any given day. When just a major horrific flus always have gone around every year, and nobody ever woke up one day and just said, okay, I'm going to cover myself, just short of putting a hazmat suit on and, stop my own breathing because somebody else just happens to be sick, instead of, hey, I've got one hell of an awesome kick-ass, and I'm sorry if any children are listening, immune system. And I'm not going to listen to what mainstream is telling me that I don't have that. Yes, we do. Nothing is weakened. It is through these things that we just get stronger and dissipate anything that works itself through the population. That's how it works. So anyway, we've got to break this mind spell. I felt myself like, getting in this little energetic tractor beam spell, and we just got to stop, start laughing, start being more lighthearted, not take things too seriously. And if somebody's trying to exercise this kind of power over you, just laugh, and it poof disappears. It's vanquished immediately. So all that to say, I was still, looking at these two because I was just so intrigued by, why are they here? What is this message? What am I supposed to do with this? And what the heck is up with these two? And so after the energetic, attempt was broken off, I still was kind of laughing because I'm like, this is really funny, and I can't believe you guys are so unfazed. You're not even moving, because I was standing out there and I was pretty close to them with my camera phone. Anyway, all that to say, no, they just sat there and stayed there pretty chill after that. And so I studied them a while, and then I went back inside. So, was this a UFO/ET encounter? Were these projections, or were these other entities, within these 3D bodies? Because they were 3D, actual 3D animals. And I think that's what would happen. I think there was some type of entities. I don't know if they're ET in origin or some other energetic force, let's say. But after that little exchange, nothing really happened further. But I want to bring that up about the idea of darkness and light. And then there's light, there's loving divine light, and there's false light from the opposite direction. But when I say, how are we doing out there, of course, the worldwide situation, the mass dark spell is, hitting people in different ways. Some people don't even, feel it. They're unfazed because they're not even aware of it. And that can be for a number of reasons. Especially if people are just, complying and covering the face and going through all those motions. They might not even feel much because they're doing everything and not meeting any resistance. Others of us who are standing up strong and saying, absolutely not, we're not doing this, not covering, suffocating ourselves, that's just crazy, not, taking these bizarre injections and doing these other things. Of course, we're going to feel it stronger because we're going to maybe meet some more resistance, or, it's actually a blessing in disguise, because we're learning the full strength of our incredible power that we have divinely. And then, there are others for other reasons who just may be not feeling it, or you're in a very rural area or in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. It's somewhere, but you know what I mean. And just not really feeling the effects. So for those of us who are, because of course they're the opposite extremes, such as in Australia and Austria and other places I hear, you know, then if you're in that situation, you are in the extreme part of it. But again, it is it is a blessing in disguise in that you will find your true gifts within and know what you are truly made of and who you truly are in the face of this extreme in your face contrast. No, it doesn't feel good. Yes, it feels like absolute darkness and oppression at times. But I want to say, are you seeing through the seeming darkness? Because it is seeming darkness. Or are you finding yourself unfazed? And you're seeing through the seeming darkness or seeing in the darkness, I'm referring to when you first go through a spiritual awakening, and actually multiple times throughout the process. It's not a one-time, one-and-done deal. It's called the dark night of the soul, if you haven't heard of that. D-knots. That's when you hit the ground, question everything, your existence, all of life. It's huge existential moments happen there. And it feels like crap. I'll just say it. Your whole world feels like it's ending, and you go through this horrible process. Physically, you might have awful headache, or just feel like everything's ending, and you got to walk through that. That's the very dark tunnel. And there's a book from the 20s by a metaphysician named Florence Scovel Shinn, Shinn, from the 1920s, and it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It's a thin little book. I think it's under 100 pages, very quick and easy read. But she had some students who she would teach, on this stuff, spiritual, metaphysical stuff. And I think one of the students, I'm just going to very loosely paraphrase, said something like, well, what do I do? Like, I'm in this darkness, and it feels like I can't get out. I'm in this long, dark tunnel, and, why am I not ever getting out of it? It feels horrible. And that's what a lot of us feel when we feel, quote unquote, stuck, like nothing's happening, detached from God or a loving source. It feels like hell. It's hell on earth in that moment. And it feels like you're trudging and like getting nowhere, and the tunnel is just ever expanding or just isn't getting any shorter. And I loved what she said. She's like, so what do you do when you're in this darkness? And she said, straight up, you get really good at seeing in the dark. And to me, that was just, wow, that's the total aha moment, sums everything up. You get really good at seeing through the dark, whatever that means, whatever that takes, whatever you find within yourself. And it is so true. You get really, really good at seeing in the dark. And then you really, really know that what it is to be in darkness and what it is to be in light. And that's why at times like these, you're just going to stand up whatever it takes, in whatever ways, whether they're obvious ways or just kind of like under the radar ways. But you're not going to accept anything else but the loving light after you go through these things. Take my word for it if you haven't gone through it already. Anyhow, if you want to. So all that to say, let's get into the next page. There's so much more I want to touch on, but I do want to also get to the sky observations, so let's get into it. All right, so a little bit more on the owls, ancient history, and the ET connection. And I'm going to read through this straight up and then jump right into the sky observations. So if none of this interests you, feel free to skip right ahead to the sky observations. I really don't mind. I don't care. I know whoever is meant to get these messages I'm talking about are going to get them on the Words, Wisdom, and Spirit of the Day pages. And they're not for everyone. It's fine. So let me touch on this. Owls, ancient history, and the ET connection. So the first, I'm also just giving you the links and excerpts, down below. I'm not going to read those out. I am going to read this straight through in case people are, moving around and not necessarily looking at the screen. And give me 1 second here. Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to read these quotes. So the first one, we're going to look at a little bit about Greek mythology and quotes. We don't know what all is true from that, what portions, what little truths are embedded, and what we have been, quote unquote, taught. That's a whole other story. All of history, I think we need to throw into question now that we're learning more and more about our world, what it is and what it is not these days. But let me just quote this about ancient Greek, we'll say history in quotes. So, what's more, the Athenians believed that the goddess Athena often took the form of an owl when she wanted to be presented to the people. The owl was also the protector of the Athenian trade and was honored with the presence of its figure on one side of the Athenian coins. Then we have the connection between missing time, in quotes, owls, UFOs, and ETs, the concept of overlays or screen memory, etc., coming from Dolores Cannon, the book The Custodians. I highly recommend you read that if you're into this kind of thing. So a little excerpt from there is in talking with the superconscious of one of her clients, a woman, and so this is from the describing what happened with this woman. So it's just, again, a tiny little excerpt. I recommend you go and read the book. Anyway, it says, she came around a curve and there was an owl sitting right in the middle of her lane. It was not the normal type of brown owl that is usually seen in our area. It was brilliant white with silver highlights on its chest, and its eyes were very black. It was absolutely beautiful, and she slowed down so she wouldn't hit it. It turned its head to look at her. Then it flapped its wings and flew straight up toward the truck. Its wingspan was as wide as the windshield. It startled her, and as it skimmed over the roof of the truck, Brenda twisted around to look out the back window, but there was nothing. No sign of the owl, no sign of any type of bird. Now, what's interesting there is, so this woman, Brenda, was, again, she had her sign coming to her in a very exaggerated way, so to speak. So she stopped so she wouldn't hit this owl. It was an extraordinary owl looking like a snowy owl, but that was not, she checked with a zoologist friend, and that owl should have not been in that area at that time of year. And so there's something a little extra different to get our attention. So that one was, it's a different kind of bird, wrong time of year to be there. Mine was, we've never seen owls on this property for over 50 years. Voila, there they are. And then, for other people, like Dolores Cannon herself said, oh, wow, after all of these encounters, hearing about people having these encounters, she realized that one time she was driving up to her own property in the middle of, total darkness on top of a mountain somewhere, very isolated. And she remarked that there was a really huge, unusually large, we're talking there's no way a physical owl could be this large, that came up to over the top of her car bumper in front of her, or there were a couple, I think there were more than one owl. And she just said it was just so odd. Again, she had to stop that moment. And then that one moment where you release your guard and you release your thinking of trying to rationalize, what is this? What's going on? You just are first startled. And it's in her work, in Dolores Cannon's work with her clients who had ET either abductions or experiences, and I want to touch on the difference between those. All of them kind of had that in common. Like, you look up a moment, you see lights, and it's mainly just to get you to release your tight grip on, having to define everything and knowing what this is and releasing all that logic so that whatever the ETs are trying to impart to you, they have that moment to get in and interact with you. Otherwise, if you're too guarded, they cannot do it. Now, the difference between abductions and versus experiences, I forget the name of the person who coined the term experiences instead, but it has to do with, of course, there are a lot of people who have extremely negative, horrible abduction experiences where bad things were done to them, and that is one type of ET encounter. But there are also experiences where some people might have misinterpreted things as being bad, where you hear about people put on a table and they're being, examined and such, or maybe even injected, or something's happening, or a chip put in. But in reality, the more you get into this whole topic, and again, I highly recommend Dolores Cannon's book, The Custodians, and also her 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth books. But she, when they go into the superconscious state with her clients, they see that that these other more experiences side of the ET interactions or encounters are that the ETs are monitoring us here on Earth who do have ties back to ETs. And that's a concept of star seeds, that we are here on Earth having some of these connections, either recalling them now later in life. You may call some of these things as just dreams, but they might have been actual experiences because we somehow are of their tribe or ilk or whatever, and are sent down here with specific missions on Earth to uplift it and help it ascend from a 3D consciousness to a 5D consciousness. So that's a whole nother thing, to get into. Many of you may already be aware of all of this. If not, if it's new to you, here you go. Here's a lot of fun things to research and look into on your own. Anyway, so that all to say, these owl incidences that I'm going to refer to were, for the most part, positive experiences. Now, the Native Americans, which I'm going to get into the quotes on those right now, they thought, at least a lot of the tribes, had a common theme that the owl, especially eastern screech owls, would portend death or ill events. I didn't get that feeling with my owls that showed up. That was also in the back of my mind, that I knew it was like not a good omen in terms of the Native American understanding. But I want to read what some of them, the understanding some of them have on that. It's very interesting. All right, so here we go. Among many tribes, including the Alabama, Caddo, Catawba, Choctaw, Ojibwe, Cherokee, and Cheyenne, the great horned owl and the screech owl were believed to be the most dangerous owls. Note that both of these owls have horns, in quotes, or plumicorns, which are the feather tufts, on the top of their heads. In some tribal cultures, horns are believed to be a sign of powerfulness, which may explain why horned, quote-unquote, horned owls are more readily feared. Historically, some Native Americans even believed that these owls might not be real birds at all, but are actually always shapeshifters. In other tribes, they were believed to be the restless spirits of the dead. Also, here's another excerpt. Some Native American tribes, such as the Cherokee, Lakota, and Caddo, believe that owls may bring news to medicine men who are able to understand them. This news may tell of events happening at a faraway distance, or of events of the future. Some Cherokee shamans believe these owls, especially the eastern screech owl, act as spiritual consultants on sickness and punishments. So that's just a little food for thought. I'm going to leave with you to sit with all of you, see what that means to you, and if this piqued your interest, to go look further at any of these things. Now, again, what is my conclusion about my eastern screech owl encounter? I think there was some kind of darker, maybe even neutral entity, leaning a bit dark, within at least the one skinnier owl. The other one, I think, was like a companion, just there as backup. But I really did get that strong sense. Now, the pair of owls did return 10 days later. Okay, this would have been November 27th, and I have not seen them since. And the lights they were sitting on are part of a security camera, and it trips on. So if they came back in between, I would have known, and they haven't come back. And when they came back the second time, I thought, okay, why is this pair coming back? And then at this point, I'm like, oh man, I hope they aren't bringing a sign of death or some bad news. And I still didn't really get that, but I'm like, why are they coming back 10 days later? And then I went out, did the same thing, took a picture, felt it out first. Should I go interact with these things? Is it positive or negative or neutral? And then I did go out, but there was no oppressive air, heaviness in the air, nothing like that. This time around, it just seemed like a normal night. And coincidentally, in quotes, when I went to see them, I didn't get any of that negative pull. The thin one was not, trying to lock into me. And they just felt like absolutely just normal 3D owls out there to catch food. Now, what I think is the second time around came back, because I was trying to put this story together and figure out what's really going on here. I think they came back just to demonstrate to me, to learn the difference between when entities are occupying an animal, a seeming 3D animal, and when they are not. And there are plenty of instances of this where you could have a wonderful, nice animal, interacted with it every so often, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, one day, it just seems like it's literally possessed and acts crazy or mean or does something totally out of character. And that could be that an entity stepped in to work through that animal. Or I've heard of other people, actually, there's a psychic intuitive, and she hikes a lot out in California, and she said that she, does her normal hikes. She sees rattlesnakes all the time, mountain lions, bears, you name it. She's unfazed by all of that. But this one time, this one rattlesnake literally chased her for a very long distance, down a hill, which normally never happens. And there was a whole nother level of things going to that proved to her that it was definitely something stepped in there of a extremely negative origin to try to harm her. Anyway, that's just another little aside to all of this interesting stuff. I hope I covered everything I wanted to. I'm going to move on for now, but see if this means anything to you. And then, like I said, you've got plenty here to work with if you feel like investigating anything further. All right, so now we are at long last going to get into these sky observations. I'm not going to spend too much time on them today, mainly because I'm not so sharp, because I literally went to bed past 4 in the morning, and I was up, just after 7. So you'll probably find more than I do when I go through these slides this time. Also, if I have little any stray, like I'm noticing down here, there's an old E from a different slide. I copy-pasted and forgot to eliminate that. Anyway, whether you're new or returning to this channel, I extend a heartfelt thanks for being here and welcome. If you are returning, you might want to just skip this next minute or two. I'm just going to address more for the newcomers what I'm doing here, why I'm doing it. So I go out and about my daily or nightly business. Mostly it's around Miami, Florida area, but I'll do this wherever I am, wherever I travel, wherever I go. Also just instinctively now. But I just go out and take a good 360-degree look around me up in the skies, and I noticed, there's a ton of high strangeness going on, a lot of anomalies and oddities going on in our sky. I was given a direct direct instructions to do this back in 2018. I had a really bizarre encounter that really woke me up to this, and it basically, the direct message was, look up. And I didn't quite know what that meant fully, and then it slowly started to get revealed to me more and more and more, and it was to end up doing what I'm doing exactly now. And I touch on that in the very first show, is the very first thing that I was shown to, really get my attention and to start this whole thing with this YouTube channel. Because mainly I wanted to share what I'm seeing and say, hey, is anyone else out there seeing what I'm seeing these days? Now, there's going to be weird things like actual cloaking craft, sky imprints, rigid geometries that are symmetrical, like equilateral triangles, hexagons, octagons, a lot of weird shapes starting to show up in the skies, triangular shaped clouds, just really consistently. Also things popping up extremely low in the sky, even with the quote-unquote cloud activity. And I put cloud in quotes referring to, more often than not, we've got artificial cloud systems that are cloaking craft. And I talk about the cloaking material being plasma. That's my go-to, just referring to something heavier and denser than water vapor that hangs in that can hang in the air around forever and cling and cloak objects. Also, there's some extraordinary color signatures and energy bursts happening. And we can only see those when I do what's called enhancements on the photos. So I take a photo and I just slightly adjust the levels of color, saturation, brightness, and contrast. That's really it. Occasionally I'll touch on the color temperature. And adjust those levels up and down a little bit just to, like here you see, pull different information and highlight things coming up out of the photos. Now sometimes, like in this one, I just feel something more is going on than actually seeing it. I get hints visually, but I also go by feel and to get at some of these things I'm going to show you. There are going to be some examples that are more clear and obvious than others. I do invite you to look at any of my previous shows to get a more, broader and more in-depth look at what I'm doing and some really extraordinary examples of what I'm doing. Now, if I were to only send people to 2 shows, maybe I'll do 3 only. To me, I could just stop doing all of this because those are all the smoking guns of just really crazy stuff going on in our skies. And the 3 shows are Cloud Cruiser, from, actually the actual captures mainly happened on July 4th, 2021. Also, there's the show called Lightning Show, Epic Backyard Nightcraft Sky Battle, something like that, where you can actually see evidence of a battle going on in the sky within a lightning storm, massive lightning storm that did not move. It stayed stationary for 40 minutes, which is an impossibility in the area of the world where I live. And so I knew something was up. And through the backlighting of the flashes, you clearly see the crafts, and I clearly show that. The third one I would send you to would be Awe-Filled Sunset, where I actually captured a very clear outline and everything of a kind of like World War II type battle cruiser up in the sky. And I could even use sketch tools and trace out where the gunner was and the control deck and all this stuff. So there's a lot of wild stuff going on in the skies. And as I always say, I invite you, if you are not doing this already, to please go outside and look up and look around 360 degrees and do it every so often. This can be just 2 to 5 minutes a day. Just as you're coming and going from wherever you are, if you're somebody who does not like to be outside at all and only stays at home, just stick your head out the window once in a while and notice some things. Okay? Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to keep going along. If I've glossed over anything, you're going to see what I'm talking about as we go through the show. Or again, kindly look at some other shows to see what I'm doing. Anyway, for right now, I know it doesn't look like much going on, but again, I had a strong feeling, and I did kind of notice some strange patterns developing in the sky. And here, this is a super exaggerated enhancement form, but look at, we get movement popping up vertical with like this vapor. You know, it looks like there's a horizontal object that just pops straight up out of this overall quote-unquote cloud mass that seems very artificial. We also have rectangular notch outs here that you can see that look like more square objects. Again, this little thing is shooting straight up. So as I've said on other shows, I am in subtropical to tropical Miami, Florida. I know I'm familiar with this area for decades. I've also traveled and lived around the world and, notice the skies wherever I go. In this particular case, in Miami, Florida, generally, we would always, for decades, decades and decades ago, just have puffy white clouds, cumulus clouds, that would roll, just travel across the sky pretty evenly. Sometimes they would billow up and develop into like anvil-shaped clouds and big thunderheads and thunderclouds. But more often than not these days, we're getting some other kind of weird consistency of cloud. More often than not, I'm calling it artificial. Sure, there could be different pressures and things changing on our magnetosphere and the Earth's atmosphere to thin things out. But more often than not, I'm absolutely saying it's artificial. And a lot of it develops just to be able to cloak different craft, or it's a huge cloaking craft or multiples within this like territory. So in this case, when I see stuff popping up vertically, that's an impossibility if you just had, just a regular cloud system that traveled across. So you can't have a horizontal movement and then stuff going straight up vertical perpendicular to it and say that's a natural cloud. Not happening, especially when it's something flat. And in this case, it's like not spherical, but has a shape to it, rising straight up side by side. That's all I'll say about that. But also, color signature gets real interesting because it doesn't always, just turn to a warm tone, and yet this thing is doing it all over the place with the enhancement. Anyway, this is all looking south, toward the evening. And actually, it should not be, this color signature looking south. Maybe further over to the east, but not south. Anyway, I did zoom in a little bit more, enhanced a little bit more, just to get at what is this little thing, this object here, what's happening here with this more flat bar, across, but it was too bitmappy and grainy. Now, as I always say, I narrate the show on a laptop with a much bigger screen, and that's going to give me one level of information when I look at these things. If you're looking at this on a smaller screen, more thumbnail size, you're going to see some other things like right off the bat that are going to be very obvious. So I don't yet have the setup where I can look at both the small screen and the big screen at the same time. So just know I'm definitely going to miss some big things because I'm not doing that, looking at the big scale and the small scale at the same time. So just know that's not intentional. And if I miss something and you're like, oh, why didn't she cover that? I really wanted to see or hear about it. Just let me know in the comment section below and I'll be happy to bring that up on a future show. All right, in the meantime, now I'm looking southwest toward the evening, and this is just happening on the 5th of December, but I saw this, line which looked like a chemtrail, and do look at previous shows, or as I always say, please go look at all kinds of other Earth and Sky watching channels on YouTube. People all around the world that are observing the same things, directly observing no matter where in the world they are, and it's fascinating. And then you can cross-reference and cross-check and come up with your own conclusions about what's going on these days. Anyway, this looked like a chemtrail at first, but I also did notice like a weird little haze, like a fuzz-out cloud behind it. So I'm like, okay, I definitely want to see this with enhancement. So here's that kind of weird fuzz-out cloud. So at first I thought, oh, okay, this is obvious, chemtrailers coming across with this line is a red herring so we don't look at whatever craft is happening beyond it. But then the more I look at this, look how stepped. This is not digital like bitmapping stuff. These are clearly stepped lines happening across. So I'm like, what the heck is that? That doesn't seem like even a chemtrailer would do that. And there seems to be like a puff of like a vapor behind it. So I'm like, holy crap. Oh, sorry, my language. But is this, this whole thing a kind of like craft in disguise or what? Or it's just a strange way of, again, chemtrailing, but maybe by a different means to, again, take attention away from whatever's going on back here. So I exaggerated, the enhancement one more time. So you definitely see something. There's a color, there's an energy burst back in here. There's a lot of veiling and particulate in general in the sky, so that's why it's harder to see what's going on right here. But look at this thing. Look at this burst of, of white. And again, we've got these like independent little things stepped, and I haven't seen chemtrail look like that. And then we've got like a puff of whatever vapor or smoke is going on behind there. See what you think. I don't have a conclusion on that necessarily. See what you think is going on or feel what's going on. Now this is looking at 10 o'clock at night. Normally I don't do this, but there was enough illumination, general illumination in the sky bouncing off of these what look very artificial clouds. And I noticed a darker thing moving and happening over here. So yeah, let's do this. Let's enhance it. So you definitely see like a darker object back in here, and I felt it. And then we've got like a little bit of the red-pink signature happening in here with other weird color burst and like a ball-like form happening here. So even though my camera couldn't pick up so much, it was dark, but definitely something different is happening here in this ball-like motion opposed to this more triangular shape over here. So I'm going to say there's cloaking craft up there. It did feel like it on top of it. Also, I haven't played around with certain settings on my phone. I'm just realizing I'll try to run this up next time, like on the nighttime setting, and see if we get any different results. All right, I also have a pair of night vision binoculars, but I didn't have them out that night. Okay, now we have more strange cloud activity, meaning suspected cloaking craft. This scene just looked really weird. We have to the naked eye this weird fuzz out and frayed mess. These aren't typical clouds, in this area whatsoever. And then there seemed to be a pattern developing, and they're totally different from what's going on down below. So we look to the right, and look at this. They're all kind of pitched on angles, so I'm calling these cloak and craft. We've got a triangular shape here, another little independent shape here, here, and here, and they seem to all be traveling more or less at the same angle upward, where all of this down here is just kind of staying stationary and more level. Plus, there are weird things like popping up in and out of this whole thing down here and over here. So I'm going to say these are cloak and craft, and that's that. All right, now we're going to look southeast in the morning, and this just seems strange, the way this beam of light was shooting out, the way the shadow was forming, and there's a lot of strangeness happening in here below, so we're going to look at it with enhancement. This is what we get, and with extreme enhancement, I get into these specific shapes, which started to intrigue me. Let alone this is just very bizarre how we got a straight dark beam here, but that's a whole other story. But I'm just going to look in at 8.2 because I found this fascinating. So now we get like this wrench-like look, but now it looks more like a hole here and a sphere kind of emerging here. So we're going to look at it with some more enhancement. I just have my question mark. What is this, like a sphere beyond? With these two things, I have no idea what these are, but they look very specific, very hard-edged. These are in no case cloud fragments, I'll tell you that. See what you think is going on, though. We also have this little guy, or this thing, propelling off of here. And when I see these tiny things, like I always say, that could be manned craft or personed craft, piloted craft, I like to say, or, whether it's remote controlled or occupied, or it could be just some kind of sensors that shoot off or things that take, atmospheric readings. I don't know. Some type of equipment. See what you think. I just know this isn't natural. You're not going to have a fragment of a cloud going off on a hard angle with, like, a vapor trail behind it. That's all I'm going to say. All right, so we're going to zoom in one more time on these little weird curiosities. Now I start to see a line or a groove where it's composed of several holes. There's definitely intelligent patterning going on, which means intelligent design, which means this is not just something of the earth that we understand anyway. It's not human-made is what I want to say. So see what you think is going on. There's a lot going on in here, and I recommend on this one that you run it up on a bigger screen like a laptop if you're just looking at it on a phone right now, a camera phone or whatnot. Handheld device is what I want to say. But again, this is one of those two that if I looked at it on a smaller scale, I think I would start to see things like, what's going on down here where my cursor is a little more clearly. All right, now we're going to look over to the southeast, and this was just one where the sun, I'm going to put it in quotes, meaning it's artificial solar tech up there, solar simulator. Look into all of that if you're not familiar. Look at my previous shows for more explanation on that. But I also just want to look at A for now, because there seemed to be a clear right angle in here, a wedge shape or a triangular shape, which again, and actually it has like a little track leading in here, like something just zoomed in here. So I'm suspecting that's cloak and craft or some type of sky imprint, meaning some otherworldly tech going on up there. And look at the crazy, extraordinary range of color signatures we get. We get the really reds, golden ones, and then look at this beam just on its own, just busting out here with all different colors in it. Just that I haven't encountered that before, and this is again show 136, something like that. So that was just a very odd phenomenon showing up this time. All right, then looking into these clouds to the south in the morning, This is just banking off and doing a weird thing. No natural cloud would come across and then back, dogleg back up this way. There's a darker groove back in here. Tells me there's probably some cloak and craft going on in there. And then a weird shape started emerging in here. You see the darker body happening behind all of this. That tells me there's some type of craft in there. There are these little points extending all the way here. So I think there's a bigger cloak and craft happening actually like this, where my cursor is at E. So we look at it with enhancement. We see weird activity happening at B.1. I'm going to kind of gloss over this. I invite you on your own time to look into all of this that I've flagged. I just tag highlights things that I think where things are obviously going on in any given photo. But here we also have these shadowy triangular shaped fuzz outs. One here and one's like tucked down in here. It's all really weird. So E.1 was still looking like, the most tangible evidence to go with on this overall scene. And so I'm zooming in a little more. And then at E.2, it starts to look like a face, like a little E.T. face. Maybe like a cat-like being or something, where these are two very dark eyes with a little nose and mouth below. That's what I see anyway. For maybe it's just pareidolia or cloud play, but see what you think. See that what you feel also off of this photo. But again, strange things. Clouds don't do this at B.2, nor at D.2. There's something with structure happening there. Anyway, see what you think. And in C.2 is just weird. I've been seeing some of these lately. Totally out of character with the rest of the cloud formations, and really dark gray, and sometimes really smudged out. What the heck is that thing at C.2? All right, then we're going to zoom in a little more, and I start to see a hole or an object here where the question marks are. And again, here's that little face, if you want to look at it as a little cat being with a little nose, a little mouth. The whiskers would be off here in the eyes. See what you see in this scene. All right, now we're looking southeast in the morning, and again, strange things happening with the quote-unquote light. This is not the sun. This is totally white and glaring. Anyway, we look to the right. I still don't know quite what's going on there. That's just not natural, normal. It's more golden down at the bottom, which again supports the sun simulator idea, where there's a glaring white artificial effect of technology going and covering up the effects of the original sun coming up beyond. But what's interesting here is to start to see something kind of stick-like, very straight line popping up out of here. So I know there's cloak and craft going on in here. There's also something very rigid happening off to the side here. So there is a lot going on. Look at A.1. We have a triangular wedge shape broken away here. That wouldn't happen in a natural cloud system either. See what you find. There's a lot going on in that photo. Oh, I'm going to go back one. Also at C.1, we got these two prongs popping out. To me, those are machine parts because they're parallel to each other. And whenever I see a bright hot spot, like on a sea of monochrome, either color or grayscale, that tells me more often than not that's a machine part popping out, or there's sometimes like crystalline structures that are embedded within these or hiding within these quote-unquote clouds. See what you see. All right, now, again, just weird. Just the whole thing felt weird in this entire scene. We're going to look up here at A and B, pop in there with some enhancement. B, something's going on to notch out that cloud. I didn't get it too much more. But see what you find in here. Again, look at this burst. This thing is shooting off this way with structure to it. That's the vapor trail. Spend a little time here if you like. See what you can find. Look at the profiles of the quote-unquote clouds. Oh, hold on one second. Okay, sorry. Look at the profiles of things especially too, because sometimes you see craft either perching on the profiles or zooming off, floating off. Here we have something looks like a triangular bit with cloaking material around it. And also pay attention to the color signatures and different changes. Some are obvious, some are subtle. All right, now we're going to look at this one side by side, the enhancements on the right. And I get to weird little objects hiding in up in here. And then this circular element, that's not the sun at this time of day. It's a little too high. Sun would really be down in here. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on in there, but I'm again going with the solar simulator idea. And then here we have a clear triangular shape. So to me, that's a backlit object, in the sky, because no cloud does that. All right, we're going to look more, just some little anomalies with the light and everything. So we look at A and B. We got like a more sphere-like thing, detached from this, but with a clear groove echoing that sphere-like thing. And when I see everything choppy and fuzzy to the naked eye, I mention it on every show, I just coined the phrase that staccato cloud effect, where it's choppy and fuzzy and dissonant, creating disruption in the atmosphere. I think intentionally, I think there's large or multiple craft that send out electromagnetic wave activity or other kind of disruptive wave frequencies, just to, better cloak a bunch of craft going on in a given scene in the sky. Or it could just be the side effect, of whatever power source is happening in those craft, generating that kind of movement, disturbance, local disturbance in the sky. Or it could be a combination of both, which is what I'm leaning toward. Whether it's deliberate cloaking technique or, side effect of the power source. All right, this one, A and B, just started to look weird, looked like it had a little bit of structure to it. Again, the consistency of the clouds, the quote-unquote clouds, the proximity in the sky, that they're just so low. And in this case, it even started coming all the way down in a weird way. It was not a tornado, so it's just very, eye-catching. So then I'm trying to focus in on the 8.1. I do see structure here with shadow and stuff, so I think this whole little thing is a cloak and craft. Something strange is happening at B.1 as well. Something's happening in here too, and over here. Anyway, let's keep looking. This was just a strange development of a quote-unquote cloud. Again, nothing natural about this one. The way it's kind of elongated and then curving all the way up with some weird thing up here at A. And then B2 looks like a standalone craft, a darker shadow body of some kind of triangular craft. Down here we have 2 points popping out. That tells me that's kind of machine parts or something of a cloak and craft here beyond. And you can't have a pure white cloud with a pure dark cloud. That's not a shadow. That's actually cloud material. So what's going on? There's a lot of stuff going on is the answer. See what you find. C.1, that's a clear, triangular form and cloaking material. We get a hard edge here. If you follow my cursor, there's a hard edge right there. So there's more stuff hiding all over the place. And again, in that case, we get a weird cloud form that takes your attention away to all these little bits and pieces hiding all around it. All right, here, this one, on the left, it just felt weird, different quality, light quality. Started to see some structural, shapes popping up here, down here. And here they are. These darker grooves and cutouts seem very engineered to me. So I'm going to say this overall thing is like a diving downward, cloak and craft, with a triangular shape on top of it and something else maybe docked to it or merging into our dimension from somewhere else. And then all at the same time, how do you have all this darkness and then bam, this burst of white, otherworldly, ethereal light? You don't. This is defying cloud physics. So anyway, light physics, see what you see is going on here. We have another dark body kind of diving down this way. I see that as an independent craft as well. Okay, looking at it one more time on the right-hand side, again, we see these structured holes show intelligent design. Again, the way it's pitching downward in the sky, no natural cloud system does that. And then this is echo diving down here as well. Now, I'm not sure if this is a pointed elliptical form. You can see the cloaking materials of different density around it. And I'm not sure if it's going down or if this thing somehow went up or if this is like 3 different craft. See what you think? And then here, again, a weird little shape appearing around A, weirdness happening at B, and this is what we get. So I do see that there's some type of strange activity happening in here. And again, we get like a perfectly round shape, and we have some geometry kind of trying to form here. So it's hard to see exactly what's going on in like a spherical element down here at C.1. But I'm going to say craft is riddled all in here because we have that staccato cloud effect. It's all choppy and blurry. Again, even to the naked eye on purpose, while everything else is in focus. So to me, that's cloaking technique at play. Then we have, on top of it, with the whole artificial nature, this is not any kind of natural cloud formation or consistency. Look at this thing. Look how low it is in the sky. We're going to look at this with some enhancement. Start to see some regularized spacing, these spherical elements, which tells me there's intelligent design at work. This looks like some kind of machine part popping out here to me. Anyway, see what you see. 8.1 is another one of these little standalone things with a vapor trail behind it. Or it's attached to, some bigger type of craft. See what you see in here. Okay, this just looked all strange, felt strange. The movements, straight line here. So I thought, okay, let's look at this with enhancement. This gets really weird. This is some kind of object going on in here, and then we get a total gold burst of something totally different just happening here locally. This is on angle, so 8.1 to me, that's totally a standalone craft. We have a triangular form here with heavy cloak around it. All of this is heavily veiled and with a staccato effect. And then we get bright white happening, amidst all of this. Keep in mind, east is to the right, west is to the left at sunrise. But this is too gold and too bright and too much in the north to be effects from the rising sun. So this is all local. Something's going on local to generate all of this. And I'm calling it craft. Okay, now this is looking east again at the sunrise, and this just was standalone. So I thought, oh, we have a little craft forming in here, and we have a point here, so there's a triangle form, something popping up over here. So when I looked to the right, I couldn't get at too much more what's happening with this weird little thing. Although there's something weird happening, very structured at the end of here. I think this is cloak and craft, in and out of phasing state or something. But then I looked up here, and this became more obvious. There's weird little structures with depth and dimension to them popping up over here. And then something really strange happening here. Look at that, we have cloaking material over this thing. So that's cloak and craft in my mind. Then we look here at strange activity, and I'm going to have to wrap this show up quickly now. Oh, sorry, just X this out. That's a carryover from the previous slide. But here we have the, classic. It looked like a little bit like chemtrailing, making the typical X pattern. But it seemed to be a little bit more going on than that. So I just, put more enhancement on. It looks like an object here. And some other object zoomed down this way. So I'm not calling this typical chemtrailing. I think this is a craft that came down. And I don't think this is human-made chemtrails. I think this is also maybe of some kind of ET origin. What they're doing, I don't know. See what you think. But all insanely low in the sky. And here's just a different view. And this time now we have a weird standalone cloud of totally different characters showing up at F, which was, very noticeable. And this kind of enhancement, it bleached out, but I wanted to look at A. To me, this is a craft that maybe zoomed in this way, and there's something else zooming in the opposite way as this is coming down. See what you think. Now we're going to look to the southwest toward the afternoon, and this was strange because we get evidence of a crescent sliver moon, and then this was just standalone, doing its own thing, diving down. Again, that's not a natural cloud, no way. So to me, this is some type of cloaking craft. And that's it for now. So this is the photo of the day and the close of the show, photo of the week or for the day, whatever. This is an oak tree with shadow play on the pavement in Miami, Florida. And I just want to say thanks for looking at some interesting patterns here a while and some very interesting things. It is Friday where I'm at, so if it's the same for you or close, I hope you're having a gorgeous weekend or the kickoff to it. No matter what's going around you, going around in this seeming, in the outside world, do your best to tune it out if you can. If you're in one of those severely challenged areas in the world, maybe just stay in, but tune everything off on the outside world and just in your mind's eye, envision that none of that is going on, and just really use the time to focus in on your inner powers and your inner strength. I know it is not easy, and I am sending you, if you need it, extra, tremendous strength, inner peace, inner comfort, through these times. And more importantly, tremendous love and also levity. Hope you can do things that make you smile or, put on some music that makes you dance, even if you're chair dancing. So I just wish everybody all the best. I am with you in spirit, and I am here to, my mission, I know, is just to uplift the world everywhere I can, whether it's a smile, a kind word, whatever. So I send you tremendous love and hugs. Best wishes to all. Lavender Sky Panther. Bye.